Good evening. I wanted to speak to you folks tonight about proving the paranormal scientific documentation. We've talked a lot about it on this channel, but I wanted to make a quick video. This is a response to 2 or 3 people in the comments, a number of people who have emailed me, a number of people who I've met in person, and they come to me and said there is no shred of proof, not one bit of evidence that a Ouija board is a bad idea and can contact spirits. There's not one shred of evidence, not one piece that ghosts are real. There's no such thing as any proof at all of any kind that Bigfoot exists, or Dogman, or UFOs for that matter. It's all just a bunch of nuts and hearsay. And I say, it's one thing to be skeptical, and I know it's hard to believe, but there's another thing to just be completely ignorant, to throw comments out there that you have obviously not researched one bit at all. Yeah, I admit, there's a lot of hoaxes on the internet, a lot of maybe, especially in older photography, tricks of the lens, unintentional, double negative, double images. There's a lot of stuff from older B movies that gets put on the internet that people are unaware of, college projects, home CGI. But then there's also a lot of real stuff, and that's what's great about the internet, especially YouTube. You spend time looking for that real ghost videos, and you see a couple, you're like, oh, that's fake, or that could be a shadow, or that could be misidentification, and you get one where you're like, the hair stand up on your neck watching it, and you're like, wow, that's really creepy, or wow, the context of this is really important. And not that that's proof, but I think there's a lot going for it. When it comes to Bigfoot, when people say there's not a shred of evidence for Bigfoot, I just laugh. I'm like, no, we only have DNA, hair samples, scat samples, thousands of footprints, thousands of years of Native American reports, sightings all across the world of a similar being. Every virtually native civilization out there has their reports of these things. Tens of thousands of eyewitness reports alone in the United States. And yeah, you're right, there's no evidence of it. So when it comes to UFOs, I mean, people have been seeing lights in the skies for a long, long time, way before the invention of aircrafts. And lights and objects to this day, the military has acknowledged that there are UFOs in some sense of the words, that there are unidentified flying objects. People see USOs, people diving, or objects suddenly just going into the ocean and disappearing. It's been happening for a long time. This isn't a modern thing. And to all the people who are skeptical of all this stuff and say there is no proof or no evidence, or you can't document it, you need to prove it. The very first words in a comment, prove it. I can't prove it. That's why it's the paranormal. Otherwise, it would just be normal. I can't prove it with science. Anybody who's studied the paranormal long enough knows how it works. You go out and film for 8 hours a day in the woods. The second you put your camera down because your battery's about to die, and you go pee behind a tree, is when you see something that might be Bigfoot. The second you put your stuff down and you're having a beer and you're talking, that's when you see the light in the sky and your camera's inside charging. It's when you least expect it. The paranormal, whatever it is why it's called the paranormal, why it's called the unknown, why it's called fringe sciences. Take a look at Skinwalker Ranch and all the studying they tried to do to capture stuff. It's an intelligence. There's something to this more than can be proven with our modern Newtonian sciences of where, what do you want me to do? Every time I walk into a room in a haunted house and I say a certain word, I get a reaction every single time, and you want me to film this 15 times in a row and take people there and do it? No, it doesn't work that way. It just does not work that way. So I always encourage people to film, encourage people to record, encourage people to share your encounters. Talk to other people who have seen what you've seen. Describe it. That's the best info we can get. But if you want hard scientific proof, even if I had it, it would just be dismissed as a hoax, usually. We do it for ourselves. We do it for our community. We do it for other believers, other knowers, other people who have had contact with it. We don't do it to prove it to the outside world necessarily. And that's what I just wanted to make a video on today. I think people who are all hung up on proof and you need scientific documentation of this, that's not the point. That's incredibly hard, damn near impossible. Most of the ghost images and pictures of Bigfoot were either on accident or just right place, right time, 1 in a million type chances. To have repeatable and type specimens and verifiable proof is incredibly hard for this stuff. Almost impossible, like we've said. And if that's what you want, you should go look into modern sciences and go look for something else. If you just want to be entertained, possibly find something that makes you scratch your head, maybe, wow, that looks real, that doesn't. This looks very similar to what I experienced, to what I've seen. Or once upon a time in an old house, the walls growled at me, something moved. I always felt like I was being watched. Once upon a time, we were laying on a beach and this bright silver craft was ripping through the skies in a zigzag pattern that no other object can do. Once upon a time, I was in the woods and I saw an 8.5 foot tall upright walking bear, but it wasn't a bear. It had long legs and didn't have a snout. It looked like a human, but it was a bear because Bigfoot don't exist. How far people go to ignore this stuff. And that's what I wanted to make the video on for you guys today. I know it's a bit of a rant, but I think when people get hung up on proof and scientific fact and how they want to prove it, first off, you have to look at what science is and the scientific method to have repeatable outcomes, verifiable outcomes, especially when you get into Bigfoot and you get into different zoology type experiences. It's like, how do you expect me to prove this? You know? And anecdotal reports, if I shot one and drug it in, I would be, probably taken away anyway, or it'd be dismissed as a hoax. And when you get into true paranormal stuff like ghosts and black-eyed kids and demonic things and people who have experienced in the Middle East who have experienced jinns and skinwalkers and real-life witches flying around in the air, what are we supposed to do? Then see it with our own eyes, experience it, believe people who you believe and trust, and process it in our own information. Is there a possible way you were mistaken? Is there a possible way it was a dream or hallucination? Was a possible way that someone's pulling your leg? Is it possible? What's the likelihood? And what's the likelihood that this person who's scared out of their mind telling me that they had an encounter with something they don't understand is real? And paranormal activity seems to be up lately, and more people are getting into the subject. I think there are more and more people. Population's growing out of control. And when you also look at the internet, it's a beautiful place, but it's a harsh place, and it's very easy to not do any of the work, not do any of your own research, not to look into it at all. It's very easy just to, show up on a Saturday afternoon on YouTube, your normal whatever you're into, and, watch a couple of ghost videos and a couple of Bigfoot videos and go, this is lame, there's no proof, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Or really study it, or really look at it. Especially in the Bigfoot world, we got lots of science comparatively. I mean, you look at all the different disciplines of paranormal when it comes to ghost hunting, cryptozoological unknown animals, especially in the cryptozoological world. There's lots of PhD, master's degree, professors, scientists that look into this stuff and research it and look at the footprints and hair samples and the anatomy and analyze historic and current eyewitness reports. You don't think the military has a lot of doctors and so-called scientists and people who are professionally researching this stuff, working for them, looking at UFO phenomenon, looking at maybe phenomenon that happens in the ocean and happens in the skies, happens in the woods? And you don't think they have very advanced knowledge on what's going on? So you got to remember the paranormal community as we speak it, the people that go out in the woods and look for Bigfoot, the people that go in haunted houses with their tape recorders and video cameras and EMP meters, the people that, spend their time in telescopes and going to UFO conferences and going out to secluded mountains and everything else looking for these things. Most of them are amateurs, usually smart people. I've actually very rarely have I met an unintelligent person who is into the paranormal. It happens. Typically, the more unintelligent somebody is, they have a harder time accepting some of this other stuff. And I know that seems counterintuitive, but to me, most of the people I've met that are into paranormal are very bright, very sharp people. And they have questions. And they're sharp enough to know that science can't explain everything. And it's asking somebody to prove something that probably can't be proven. So to come after an amateur researcher like myself or anybody else, or even a PhD scientist like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, and ask him to prove what Bigfoot is. He's seen him with his own eyes. He's analyzed thousands of tracks, their anatomy, looked at everything he could possibly, one of the foremost professional experts on Bigfoot. He can't prove it to you. He can't lead you to his back room and show you one in a cage. He can't go to his cabinet and pull a skull out and show you. What do you want? Proof? Well, maybe you should go in the woods and find one yourself. Go find an old cemetery or haunted place and see if you get creeped out. If you can honestly look at the monumental amount of evidence for Sasquatch, the millions of eyewitness encounters and videotapes and pictures of all the UFO footage out there, you'll honestly spend a lot of time looking at reported footage of ghost and poltergeist activity, strange phantoms. If you can honestly look at all this stuff, and yes, I know there are hoaxes, and yes, I know there are misidentifications, but if you can weed through it and honestly look at everything out there objectively and say there's nothing going on, most of the population is crazy that believes in this stuff. They're stupid. Then I think you need to look at yourself in the mirror and maybe reevaluate your value system. Anyway, that's the video I wanted to make. I know it's a bit of a rant, but it's kind of a response to people that have been hounding me lately, especially since I've got into more paranormal topics lately, where I talk a little bit less about Bigfoot and a little bit more about my paranormal experiences, and they say prove it, especially something that a place I worked at 15 years ago that I no longer have any ties or connections to, and buildings I haven't set foot in 15 years. They want me to go back and find proof. They want me to go, we didn't even really have cell phone cameras 15 years ago. If we did, they were super blurry, like 0.3 megapixels. What do you want? I wasn't a paranormal investigator. I was a security guard stuck in an amazing situation. So I think people have to understand context. It's important. And thank you very much, folks. Stay safe out there. And thanks for listening to my rant.